Hey guys, welcome on into today's video. If you're interested in getting more political forecasting, analysis, and commentary, you can click that subscribe button. In this one, we're going to be talking about a hypothetical rematch between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, and we're going to be doing it by doling out the Electoral College. Now, there's a lot more working in Bernie Sanders' favor this time around than when he went against Hillary Clinton back in the 2016 primary. For instance, Bernie Sanders now has overwhelming name recognition, which he didn't have at all going in to 2016. Also, Bernie Sanders is the most popular politician in America in terms of favorability. He's been consistently hovering in the upper 50s, even touching in the 60 range in terms of favorability. In comparison over to Clinton, who's one of the least favorable politicians, of course, in the twilight of her career, probably not going to be running for anything anymore, but sitting at about 37% favorability in about that range, which is pretty terrible. So that's going to have effect on this race. I'm not going to give every state to Bernie Sanders. Of course, we're going to be using data from the 2016 primary, and you can see that up in the right-hand corner. The green is where Sanders did well. The yellow goldish color is where Clinton did well, and then below that is a map where we can look at where we have closed compared to open or mixed primary and caucuses. And the more open a primary is in general, we're going to have Bernie Sanders doing better than if it's just closed off to registered Democratic voters who are more affinity to Hillary Clinton's side of things. So we're going to start off basically just going through and giving Bernie Sanders every single state that he won in 2016. We don't see him taking a step back in any state in a hypothetical rematch against Clinton. And also another thing to point out is the fact that Hillary Clinton lost to Donald Trump. There's just kind of a sour taste in a lot of progressives, independents, and Democrats' mouths about the fact that she wasn't even able to beat someone like Donald Trump. So that also, I think, is going to work against her somewhat in this hypothetical rematch. But like I said, every state that Bernie Sanders went on to win, we're going to give him at the start of this video. And then we're going to go through the rest of the states and give out whether we think they'll flip to Bernie Sanders or stay with Hillary Clinton. So starting off here, giving Bernie Sanders Alaska, and Sanders is going to be blue and Clinton's going to be the red states. We're also going to give him Hawaii, Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, North Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Indiana, West Virginia, and then moving up to the northeast, Vermont, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and Maine. And I believe that's every state that Bernie Sanders was able to beat Clinton in back in 2016. Now we're going to go through the rest of the states, and we have Sanders doing considerably well. If it was close, we're going to give it over to him. Basically, the only situations where we see Clinton winning some of these states are ones where she just absolutely dominated Bernie Sanders, or states where she has ties to or could be a little bit more popular than Sanders overall. So moving out, we're going to be going from West Coast over to East. California, one of the most progressive states in the U.S. And Bernie Sanders, he didn't do too bad for himself going against Clinton back in 2016. We see California as being an area where he now has a lot more awareness than he did a couple of years ago. And being such a progressive state, we would be pretty surprised if Sanders wasn't able to pick up California. Moving on to Nevada, where it was basically a 50-50, even with the closed-off situation in Nevada. And the fact that it was so close, we see Bernie Sanders being able to get over the line, especially when you consider that Nevada is a state that has their process early on, and Sanders didn't have quite that name recognition early on in 2016, which he definitely has now. Moving on down to Arizona and New Mexico, two states where it was pretty close between Sanders and Clinton. Unfortunately for Sanders, these are closed primaries, and the fact that it was even closer in New Mexico, we feel like he would be able to get over the line, and this one was basically a 50-50. Arizona wasn't quite as close to a 50-50, and the fact that it is a closed situation, even though it would probably be extremely close, we're going to go ahead and give that to Clinton, especially with a bit of an older voting bloc there in the state of Arizona. Moving on up to South Dakota, another state where it was about a 50-50 situation between Sanders and Clinton. So we're going to have Sanders being able to get over the hump in that state as well. Moving on down to Texas, Bernie Sanders didn't do very well in Texas, especially when you look across the entire Southeast. These are going to start being states where we have Clinton picking up here and there. So Texas, probably a lot closer, but still at the end of the day, we do see that staying with Hillary Clinton. She did quite well back in 2016, even though she'd probably lose quite a bit of that support, and what might even be almost a coin flip situation, still going to give her the state of Texas. Moving on up to Iowa, another state that was about 50-50, and kind of this pocket of the United States with Iowa, Missouri, and Illinois, all states where basically it was a 50-50 between Sanders and Clinton. We have Sanders getting over the hump in all of these states and grabbing them probably by about maybe 5, 10, 15 percentage points in what was basically a 50-50 scenario the first go around. Moving on down to Arkansas, of course, the Clintons are well known there. We think that she would be able to continue to hold that. And now moving throughout these southeastern states where Clinton absolutely demolished Sanders, even in a lot of these open primaries where Sanders tended to do better, just not in the southeast. But we're going to be giving Clinton Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina. Moving on down to Florida, a little bit closer of a scenario than some of these other southeastern states, but we still feel like Clinton had enough of a lead, maybe even a little bit more so than what she had over in Texas, where she'd be able to hold on, especially with the older voting bloc again that we have down in a state like Florida during a primary situation. Moving on up to Tennessee, kind of a similar margin of victory in comparison to states like Florida and Texas, even though we see it being a bit closer, we're still going to give Clinton Tennessee. Moving on up to Kentucky, another state where it was basically split between how many votes that Clinton and Sanders were able to get. And Sanders' message definitely resonates with people that are in the state like a Kentucky, so we're going to give him that. Moving on up to Ohio, and this was one of those Midwestern states where Sanders didn't do quite as well as he did in some of the other ones like Michigan, Indiana, Wisconsin, Minnesota. Kind of a little bit surprising to see Clinton do a bit better in Ohio than some of these other Midwestern states, but Clinton went on to lose to Trump, of course, in Ohio. It was one of the key states that she lost, and Sanders was close enough where we think that he would be able to grab it in a rematch scenario. Pennsylvania, a closed off primary, which would help Clinton, but even back in 2016, it was very close, and Sanders' message definitely resonates with those Pennsylvania-type voters. If it was a mixed or an open primary, no doubt it would go over to Sanders. Probably a bit closer here with a closed primary, but still, we feel like Bernie Sanders would gain enough ground to grab the state of Pennsylvania. Now, moving up to New York, a very interesting situation because Clinton, there's still a lot of supporters of her in that state. She was the senator from New York, but Bernie Sanders also has ties to New York. Unfortunately for him, it is a closed-off primary, which definitely helps Clinton in a rematch situation. And although, again, we see it as being a little bit closer, maybe almost a coin flip, we're still going to give this one over to Hillary Clinton. Now, moving up to the Northeast, where all of these states were pretty close if they did go for Clinton, like Connecticut and Massachusetts, were basically 50-50 scenarios. So we see Bernie Sanders being able to move the needle enough to grab those states. And now we're going to move down into kind of the area of the country that's between the Southeast and the Northeast with North Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, and New Jersey. So we look at New Jersey. Clinton did quite well. There's a lot of establishment, Democratic positivity and sentiment there. And although Clinton was able to win by a pretty good margin, especially in states like New Jersey and Maryland and Virginia, probably shifting more to about a 50-50, maybe even almost a coin flip scenario, but still we're going to be giving these states over to Clinton. We feel like she had just enough lead in these particular states where even though it'd be a lot closer, probably still going to her at the end of the day. And just a couple more states here and the District of Columbia left. The District of Columbia went for Hillary Clinton pretty overwhelming, a lot of African-American vote there. We feel like she would get the District of Columbia again. And then moving up to Delaware. Delaware and North Carolina both had a similar kind of margin. Not quite as big for Clinton as Virginia, Maryland, and New Jersey. We feel like these are also close enough to where Bernie Sanders would be able to swing it enough to flip these states over to his side of things. So that's how we have the map going down in a hypothetical rematch between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. And like I said at the start of the video, there's a lot more positives working in Bernie Sanders in a rematch scenario. Also, he's one of the most popular politicians in the United States, and he has way more name recognition this time around than that was one of the big things Clinton had in the first go-around between the two. Clinton, she in a potential rematch, probably doesn't have the same amount of support from the establishment that she did in the first time around again, so that would also kind of hurt her a bit. I might even been a bit generous by giving Clinton as many states as I did in this hypothetical matchup, but still, nonetheless, we definitely see Bernie Sanders winning a rematch between him and Hillary Clinton if they were to have another primary against each other. So kind of a fun little video here, guys, rehashing a moment in history. If you're interested, again, in seeing more of these political forecasting analysis and commentary videos, you can click that subscribe button, and we'd love to see you back for more videos in the future, or you can check out ones that we've already made on our channel. Thanks for stopping on in. We hope to see you guys in future videos. Bye.